I want to welcome everyone to the closing rally of Marxism Festival 2018. Woo! My name is Naima Omar. I have been a part of organising the festival and I will be chairing this closing rally. I hope everyone's had an amazing time full of discussion and debates. So, today we have a great lineup of speakers. I will introduce them one by one. Our first speaker is Tina McVeigh. She's a long-standing member of the Socialist Worker Party in Ireland, a councillor in Dublin, an activist in the Repeal Act and the housing campaign.
Hi everyone. Has everyone had a great Marxism? Yeah? It's been fantastic to be here at such a hot Marxism, hot topics as well as hot weather. But it's especially incredible to be here following our incredible victory that we just had in Ireland. I was down in the south of Ireland and doing some training, and I stopped off to stay with a friend of mine for a night, and she was very heavily involved in the campaign down there, so I helped her out for a few hours, and then we said we'd go for a walk on the beach, and we weren't going to talk about the campaign, we were going to take some time out, but we were saying that isn't it great that we were able to freely call to people's doors and talk about abortion and talk about women's choice and bodily autonomy, but especially being able to just say the word abortion, and we felt that like every time we said it, that we were just like removing more and more of the stigma and the taboo that went around it. And then we decided, right, that's it. We're not going to talk about this for the rest of the day. We're going to take some time out. And there was absolute silence in the car. And then after about 10 minutes, we just looked at each other, and the two of us at the same time went, abortion, abortion, abortion! Say it loud, say it clear, and never stop saying it. Because abortion isn't a new thing. It's as old as womanhood. It's like throughout history, abortion has been necessary and an accepted part of women's lives. But abortion rights that we have, as we know, have been really, really hard fought. And despite huge advances in legislation and provision of abortion services, there are still many barriers and obstacles that exist for women, particularly for working class women, making it extremely difficult for women to access that care. And we've won the right to work, we've won the right to vote, so why are we still talking about abortion rights in the 21st century? It's because they're under massive attack from conservative political forces, and Trump's ascendancy in the US has put these extreme right-wing politics back on the world stage, and his contempt for women's rights in general, but our reproductive rights in particular, is it's evident, it's ominous, and it's not unique. And these ideas have been gaining ground in Poland, in France, in Spain, the UK, in Italy, and they're giving confidence to anti-abortionists and to racists. And I just want to quote from this guy is a senator, he's a Northern League senator in Italy, and he's recently said, Massimiliano Romeo is his name, and he recently said, 6 million, he claims 6 million children have been killed in the womb, and then they say that we have to import migrants to boost the population. What a thing to say. Like right there you've got, the two huge issues for the extreme right, women's rights and racism all encapsulated. And that's really, when I heard that in Judith Orr's fantastic talk yesterday, for me it just really starkly captured everything that is at stake. But in the face of all of this, alongside the growth of these ideas, there is a massive growing mood of resistance. Country after country, we're seeing huge marches, women on the rise with Me Too, the strikes, the women's marches, not just in Ireland around the repeal campaign, but in lots of countries all around. And women are saying, we aren't wombs. We are people before we're mothers, and we're sick of our bodies being seen as vessels, and we're sick of being used as political footballs. And that's what we said in Ireland when we voted on the 25th of May in a wonderfully fitting reversal of history. In 1983, 67% of the population had voted to insert the odious 8th Amendment into the Constitution, which effectively banned all abortion for any reason. And last month, 66% of the population voted to kick it back out. And it will stay out. And women in Ireland, we have lived on the shadow of that amendment for 35 years, because not only did it constitute a ban on abortion, but even worse, it encapsulated decades and decades of state and church shaming and criminalising of women. And Catholicism, which was used as an instrument of social control in Ireland, we as women bore the brunt of that kind of oppression. And you might be surprised to hear that there's another referendum coming now, I think in the autumn, where we still have in the Constitution an article that states that the woman's rightful place is in the home, and that she shouldn't be, seriously, and that she shouldn't, by economic necessity, have to leave or neglect her duties in the home. And of course, it's the same government that think that they benevolently granted this referendum, which, by the way, years and years of grassroots and left-wing activism and having left-wing TDs in the Parliament that consistently kept it on the agenda. That's what won us the referendum. We demanded the referendum and we won it. But this government seems to think that they've granted it to us from high. And the Minister for Health and our Prime Minister not that long ago saying that they were absolute supporters of pro-life. But anyway, back to the irony on these people that women, whether within or without the home, we already are not having our social, economic and cultural needs met. And just removing this article from the Constitution is not going to make any difference when they're consistently hammering us with their neoliberal policies. And I say to them, a woman's place is definitely not in the home. A woman's place is in the revolution. And that's where we're going to stay. So, despite the fact that that we've won the right to the legislation, which is going to give us our abortion rights, we're still homeless. We're still paid less than men. We don't, we're paid less for work of equal value. We can't access healthcare, child services, etc. And what we need to do now in Ireland is, on the wings of this massive victory, is not be complacent. We have to push forward and fight for real choice, which gives us access to our social, economic, and cultural needs. And we have to make sure that in all places where the women's rights that have been won are under threat, we have to stand in solidarity with the sisters. And I call on you guys to stand in solidarity with our sisters in Northern Ireland who have been calling for the North is next. And here in Britain, you have to seize the day as well and push past the 1967 Act. And women everywhere have to unite and fight. Because when the women rise, the brothers who are in the struggle rise too. And that takes us one step further to where we want to be, which is in a socialist society that puts our needs ahead of the needs of greed and profit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. Before we bring in our next speaker, I think we would like to announce that Bookmarks, the Socialist Bookshop, has sold £26,000 of books. That's amazing. Our next speaker is Christine Buchholz, an MP of Delinqua, a supporter of Marx 21, and an anti-racist activist.
Let me start with thanking the Irish comrades and brothers and sisters for this marvelous victory, and encouraged the women in Germany so much to continue the fight for the right for free abortion and against the racist and anti-feminist AfD and the so-called pro-life movement that want to make our lives even more difficult. Thank you very much. And I bring you the warm greetings of the anti-racist movement in Germany. 2 days ago, on Friday, 12,000 demonstrated in solidarity with refugees and sea rescue organizations in Berlin and many other cities. Last Saturday, 6,000 demonstrated in Augsburg against the party conference of the AfD, despite massive police repression. And on May 27th, 70,000 demonstrated against the march of the AfD in Berlin. We said we don't want the AfD to spread their racism on our streets, and we outnumbered the AfD that got 6,000 on the streets. And this gave confidence to the majority of population that is frightened, seeing the AfD growing and spreading racism, hatred, and fear. 5 years ago, I hardly imagined that a far-right party with a strong fascist wing inside would enter the federal parliament by gaining 12.6%. And the situation was changing very quickly. We analyzed in the beginning of 2016 that the main conflict line in Germany was between the left and the right. In 2014 and 2015, we realized that the AfD succeeded to enter the first federal parliaments and had a breakthrough in further federal parliaments in 2016. We decided, together with other anti-fascists and anti-racists, to create a campaign to build against the AfD. And I think now, as we see that the AfD is in process of becoming a fascist party, that this was the absolutely right decision, to draw a line between us and them. And this was the hour of birth of Aufstehen gegen Rassismus, Stand Up to Racism, our campaign. Together with many others, we were part of several mobilizations locally and nationally against the conferences of the AfD. We are organizing in localities. We have anti-racist trainings to empower people to stand up to racism in their workplaces, in the universities, in schools, and on the streets. And what happened in Berlin, how we got the 70s on the streets. Aufstehen gegen Rassismus forged an alliance together with many others that included trade unions, anti-racist organization, gay and lesbian organization, Muslims, the youth organizations of the SPDs, the Greens, also the left party, of course, MPs of the SPD and the Greens, and which was the most important, which brought the numbers, was that the club scene organized a big rave against the AfD, and the theater people called for the people to go on the streets, and this brought the 70,000 on the streets. And I think this shows the potential of resistance against the AfD, and we are reaching much broader audience. In Augsburg, where we had the protest last week, we produced a poster, No Beer for Nazis. And the well, and this is in Bavaria, where they like to drink beer. And the barkeepers put out on the windows and on the in the bars. And I think, this was a very good thing. I think building a united front and an anti-racist campaign is key to counter the attacks from the right. But what is the reaction of our government? It is a false reaction. So we have a Trump-like Minister of Interior. He's called Horst Seehofer, and he's a good friend with Viktor Orban or Sebastian Kurz in Österreich. And he is pushing the coalition to the right. Merkel achieved a shameful agreement in the EU to close the doors of Fortress Europe even tighter. And the Merkel government, with the support even of the Social Democrats, wants to create prison-like camps to detain refugees and immediately sending them back who have been registered in other European countries. And these measures increasing the anti-refugee and the anti-Muslim sentiment in society, and to be honest, they also strengthen the AfD. I just got a very brand new poll. The AfD is now on the polls by 17%. And the government of Social Democrats and the Conservatives, so they don't have a majority anymore. The SPD itself is by 17%, same number like the AfD. And I think it's important to say that the left party's reaction is to stand firm against racism and for open borders. We had a party conference one month ago, and I'm proud to say that the National Party Conference of Die Linke endorsed an amendment which we supported very much, where we said we have to fight global injustice and war because this is the reason why people are fleeing. Secondly, we need open borders and safe passage for refugees. And thirdly, there is enough for all of us. Social justice for everyone, for the pensioners, for the refugees, for the students, for everyone. And this amendment was endorsed by the overwhelming majority of the Left Party. But there's also an argument inside. For example, the leader of the parliamentary group, Sarah Wagenknecht, is saying that it's naive to demand open borders. And we have to concentrate on social issues. And I say, no, we stand for the freedom of movement. And of course, we also concentrate on social issues. And of course, we support every fight for social issues. But we need to confront racism and mobilize against the AfD, because solidarity is the key to successful struggle. Nazi Germany was responsible for the Holocaust and the Second World War, and we say, never again. We will never allow the Nazis getting to power again, not in Germany and not elsewhere in Europe and the world. And we continue to build the resistance. Our success of the 27th of May was a success of all of us. And the success of your mobilization on Friday and Saturday will be the success of all of us. So let's keep on fighting together.
Thank you so much, Christine. So many of you would have seen stalls around the festival selling the Socialist Worker paper. We sold 742 papers throughout the whole festival, which is amazing. Our next speaker is Janet Alder, sister of Christopher Alder, who was murdered in police custody in 1998.
Now ask me, did I ever think that I would be stood here 20 years later with so many people aware of Christopher's death? I would never have thought this. I'm as angry now as I was the first day that I found out that my brother was murdered. I would have never, ever, ever have had the strength to stand up here without the support of the many, many people around the country that have understood and listened to the horrific death of Christopher. For those that have not seen it, you can see it on YouTube, or you can watch Death on Camera, so I'm not going to repeat what I've repeated many, many years ago. But what I am going to tell you is the depth that this system will go to cover up their misdemeanors and their racism. After hearing police officers shouting monkey and chimpanzee noises when his body was laid in situ, after watching the CPS eradicate that evidence, after seeing him destroy his clothes and all the evidence, to hoodwink the public, to make the public believe that Christopher, like many other black men in this country, just die at the, on the police station floor just to annoy them or in the back of the van. That is not true. I'm here today to tell you just some of the depths that they will go to. We thought we buried my brother in 2000. They swapped his body for a 77-year-old woman who we buried and hid his body in 6 body bags for 11 years. When you have one experience of the lies that these people tell, you never ever fall for the same lies again. Although I have never, ever fallen for anything that they have said. They have tried their best to gag me in such a way because they know that I have the evidence to show that they knew it was Christopher, they knew it was a man all those years. They were insulted my family by using his body for training purposes, to train trainee police officers, year after year after year after year, right until 2010. Well, if they think I'm going to go away, I'm not going to go away. No justice, no peace. I never ever thought for 1 minute that the truth would come out the way that it has. It's a testament to say to carry on fighting, because we don't, it might not come out the way that we expect. The battle where we're going now is I have now got a barrister, a good team behind me, and we're going to fight to get this gagging order lifted. Because the only reason they did it was to hide what is clearly there. They've tried spying on me, which I knew in 1998, and I shouldn't have really expected anything different, because that's the lowest depths that they can go to. But may I just say, without the ordinary people in this country, I would never, ever have had the strength. And once again today, coming to Marxism has instilled me even more, instilled in me the fight even more. We will get justice. We will not allow these people to just kill, murder our loved ones with impunity. They're playing the long game. Well, I'm playing the long game. Keep your ears open. We have a march every year, last Saturday in October. I would like as many people to come and show unity and solidarity. There's so much going on now with Donald Trump that these things are going to start happening more and more and more. All I'm going to say is thank you for allowing me to come, thank you for listening, and thank you for fighting for justice and giving me empowerment. No justice, no peace.
Thank you so much, Janet. Before our final speaker, just to let everyone know, 70 people have already joined the Socialist Worker Party during Marxism. And don't worry, there's still time to join. There'll be people at the back with forms. But it's not over yet. We still have the Marxism After Party with 2 very special bands. This will be taking place in the venue and the gallery bar in the Student Central. So without further ado, our last speaker is Amy Leather, the Joint National Secretary of the Socialist Worker Party and one of the organisers of the Marxism Festival.
Okay, well, first of all, as one of the organisers of the festival, alongside actually Lewis Nielsen, I don't know where he is, but at the back, we both want to say a massive thank you to all the people who made it happen, especially to all the speakers, actually, like the powerful speakers we've just heard from today. But also to all the very many people who play a part behind the scenes ensuring that Marxism runs smoothly. And in particular, I want to thank one group. Those are the people you've seen all weekend at the meetings, carrying the water, putting up posters, wearing the red T-shirts, the team. It couldn't happen without them. And really, there are far too many people to name that make Marxism happen. But I do want to name one person, because I don't think Marxism could happen without her. And that's Monica Axon, who organises the creche. Well, look, I hope everyone here has not only enjoyed Marxism Festival, but actually feels better armed and prepared for the battles we face. Because we face some very serious challenges, and they start right now. Because I hope to see all of you back here in London in just a few days' time. Because this coming Friday, we're going to protest against Trump, the world's number one racist who is daring to visit Britain. And then the next day, this coming Saturday, we're going to stand together against the Nazis, the far-right supporters of Tommy Robinson, as they attempt to rally here in London. And over the next few days, we've got to go all out to make those protests as big as possible. Pick up your leaflets at the end from the Stand Up to Racism stall. Because the point is, numbers on the streets are going to matter. And also, because next weekend won't be the end of Trump or the end of the far right. Because the rise of Trump and the support for a Nazi like Tommy Robinson are concrete expressions of two great themes happening in world politics. An increase in the mainstream racism of politicians and the state, and the far right expression of that on the street. And it's the interaction of those elements that is accelerating and is so dangerous. But look, let's not forget the context in which they are growing. Global economic crisis, growing inequality, grinding austerity, 10 years on now from the financial crash, and increasing polarisation as mainstream politicians fail to offer solutions. And Trump, when you look at him, his victory was an attempt by the right wing to seize the initiative and make gains in that situation. But, you know, a year and a half into his presidency, what is shocking is how he's trying to normalise these things, isn't it? A president who laughs at the notion of climate change, brags about assaulting women, declared war on abortion rights, a president who has never made nuclear war feel more real, that's emboldened the Israeli state to murder Palestinians and banned Muslims from entering the country. But, you know, who would have thought in 2018 we would see children of asylum seekers in cages, that we'd see crying toddlers being ripped away from their handcuffed parents, and that their detained parents would be told their children were going for a bath, but then those children did not come back. I mean, I think when you see this, it doesn't feel like an exaggeration to say there are echoes of the 1930s here. And not only in the actual cruelty, but in the dehumanisation of those people who are seeking asylum and fleeing violence. Because, you know, don't worry, is what Trump says, and this is an actual quote, these aren't people, these are animals. They want to pour into and infest our country. So the message is, doesn't matter what we do to them. And as many others have said, the first step on the road to the catastrophe of the 1930s to mass murder is to dehumanise an entire group of people. And, you know, it's not a surprise then, is it, that the fascists, the white supremacists, the Nazis, they all felt emboldened to march like they did in Charlottesville in America last summer with their flaming torches and swastika banners. Remember how Trump referred to them as some very fine people. But, you know, it hasn't gone uncontested. It was absolutely brilliant to see hundreds of thousands of Americans last weekend protesting against Trump's brutal border policies. Over 700 demonstrations took place, over 30,000 people in Washington alone. Thousands of people refusing to let Trump's vicious racism be normalised. And that's why we too have to march against Trump in our thousands this Friday, not only in London, but in every town and city across Britain, because we're going to send a message to the world that we don't accept Trump, we reject his actions, we abhor his racism, and we won't let it be normalised. But you see, it could be very comforting just to think that Trump, you know, however bad he is an aberration, unique to the US, a monster far away across the Atlantic. But this phenomenon is not just confined to the US. It can be found much closer to home across Europe. I mean, look at the brutality of Matteo Salvini, Italy's new interior minister, leader of the racist League Party. He told 600 refugees, including children and pregnant women, that they could go drown in the Mediterranean when he refused to let rescue ships dock in Italy. Now he has called for a mass cleansing of migrants, street by street, quarter by quarter. He's drawing up a register of Roma people in Italy so they can be expelled from the country. That is another chilling echo of the 1930s and 40s and what happened to Jewish people. It's not an aberration within Germany, within Europe either. Let's not forget that the policies of Fortress Europe turned the Med into a mass grave long before Salvini came along. You know, these people, the politicians who run Europe and the institutions that the liberal elite are always urging us to look to for protection against the far right, they've now agreed to lock out refugees altogether and build detention centres in Africa. That is their answer to the refugee crisis. And they don't just target refugees, they target Muslims too. Last month, I think it was, the Austrian government shut 7 mosques and expelled 60 imams. Denmark, the Danish government, has labelled Muslim areas ghettos and is going to take children as young as 1, separating them from their parents to attend 25 hours a week instruction in Danish values. I mean, so we see, and so we see the same process playing out in countries across Europe, where the isolation of the far right has been breached. Racist populists have gained support by posing as the false friends of the working class. Those racist populists are engaging with the actual fascists, and the mainstream conservative parties, under pressure, have adapted to the far-right agenda, which, rather than undercutting the racists, emboldens them and gives more confidence to the far-right and fascists. And that's why it has been so brilliant to see our comrades at the heart of the mass demos, like Christine just talked about in Germany, of the 70,000 against the AfD, the thousands that have taken to the streets in Austria to oppose the Freedom Party. And it's why we're going to stand together when Stand Up to Racism hosts an international conference on Saturday, the 20th of October. Because we're also seeing the same process here in Britain. Because, you know, in less than a year, we have gone from the far right being a rump to now marching in their thousands, whether it's under the banner of the Football Lads Alliance, the Democratic Football Lads Alliance, or supporters of Tommy Robinson. I mean, it was shocking to see 15,000 assorted right-wingers and Nazis on the Free Tommy March in London just a few weeks ago. I mean, they claim to be for freedom of speech, but it was very clear they don't mean freedom of speech for everyone when they rampaged through Leeds a few weeks ago shouting Muslims off our streets. They want to deny free speech to anyone they don't deem British enough. And the Free Tommy demonstration, it had Nazis openly zeke-hailing and ex-BNP EDL members on it, but it also had the sharp-suited young men and women of Generation Identity, admirers of the US alt-right. It had the ideologues of Breitbart there, messages of support from across Europe. And on all these recent demos, UKIP have been in attendance. Not just a few members, but their leadership actually speaking. Gerald Batten, their leader, told the crowd, we must submit or resist Islamisation. UKIP, this racist populist party that's been smashed at the polls in recent elections, is now marching with the DFLA and alongside the Nazis and fascists supporters of Tommy Robinson. And that's why we have to prepare. It is absolutely crucial we build Stand Up to Racism. And the question everywhere has to ask is, if supporters of Tommy Robinson come to your town, will we be ready? And I have to say here, well done to Leeds and Wakefield, who were ready and stood up yesterday and outnumbered them. But that means building Stand Up to Racism everywhere and as broadly as possible. Use the statement. You can pick these up again as well. Use the statement against Tommy Robinson. It's now signed by just about every trade union general secretary, Diane Abbott, John McDonnell, Muslim leaders and many others. But you see, it's not only Trump and the international support that have boosted the far right here. Don't forget, it was Theresa May who called for the hostile environment for migrants. Theresa May, who set targets for people to be deported. That is what led to the Windrush scandal, where people who had lived all their lives here in Britain, worked and had families, were then denied medical treatment, forced out of their jobs, evicted from their homes, and some were deported to countries they'd never lived in. And you see, they're doing this because the Tories are so weak. They're so weak, but they're also so divided, aren't they, over Brexit? And that makes them very, very vulnerable. And so they want to divide us, to fracture any opposition. That's why they stoke up this racism, happily assisted by much of the media. But, you know, the outcry over Windrush was so strong, they eventually had to concede they were wrong. But then they had to argue that there's good and there's bad immigrants. Well, we are very clear in the SWP. We don't accept this. Not only do we say refugees are welcome, but we are against all immigration controls. We do not accept the distinction between so-called good and bad immigrants, between the idea of good, genuine asylum seekers versus bad economic migrants. We don't accept it because none of these people are the cause of the problems we face. They are not the ones privatising the NHS. They're not the ones who've cut benefits, imposed sanctions, attacked disabled people and forced thousands of people to use food banks. And they're not the ones whose drive for profit and disregard for health and safety led to the horror of Grenfell and the loss of so many lives. Because, you know, the truth is here, there is plenty of money. The richest 1,000 people in Britain now have a record total wealth of over £700 billion. That's up 10% on last year. And we have got to start pointing the finger and putting the blame towards them at the top and their Tory friends who protect them. So we have a message for the Tories. We are coming to get you. They have got their conference in Birmingham this autumn, and we want to ensure thousands are there to protest against both austerity and racism. Put the date in your diary now. Saturday, the 29th of September, a demo is being called by the trade unions and the People's Assembly, and we want to make it as big as possible to ensure we don't let the Tories get away with it, because they are weak, and now is the time to stick the boot in further. And that also means we need more action like the strikes we've begun to see some of. The strikes like the university lecturers in the UCU taking on the cuts to pensions. Strikes like the fantastic Wigan strikers striking against NHS privatisation and outsourcing, who we've heard from at Marxism and who won their dispute. I mean, who says there, we don't have power when we act collectively? We can see it. And the thing is, it's been great to be here at Marxism and to have lots of people from the Labour Party here with us, debating and discussing. And we hope, very soon, that we see Jeremy Corbyn alongside John McDonnell and Diane Abbott in government, because how refreshing it would be. But you know, there's a big danger here. This might not be for another 4 years. 4 more years of the Tories shattering our services and destroying people's lives. We need action now. And when faced with the Nazis and the far right mobilising on the streets, we can't just take comfort in the rise of Jeremy Corbyn or rely on a Labour government to deal with them. We have to confront them now, and elections are not enough. In fact, elections can even point away from the mass collective struggle we desperately need as those who maybe want change wait for Corbyn. And we know that even if he gets into office, the pressures on Corbyn are going to be immense. Not only will the ruling class use all their might to organise against anything that's going to affect their interests, but the Labour right wing are waiting in the wings, ready to pounce and undermine Corbyn when they see a chance. So we are for action now, for intervention now, for solidarity with those fighting back now. And that requires a different organisation. An organisation like the Socialist Workers' Party that is not just about elections, but organises alongside others to confront the Nazis, that challenges the racist scapegoating, that strives to increase unity rather than division, and that offers socialist solutions to the crisis, that fights for a world where people and the planet are put before profit, and fights for a world free of exploitation and oppression. Because, you know, when we talk about polarisation, it doesn't have to go to the right. It can also go to the left. And we've seen glimpses of this. One of the things the Windrush scandal shows is actually it's possible to have a national debate on racism and immigration that doesn't benefit the right wing. Remember, Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, had to resign. And we can, yeah. And we can also see how ideas can change when people get organised collectively. We've just heard about the victory for abortion rights in Ireland, showing how change is possible in that way. So we're going to go from this, and we know we have got huge tasks, and we're going to be very busy for the next few months, and all our members in the Socialist Workers' Party are fantastic activists. But we also know activism alone is not enough. You need socialist politics. That's why the SWP has led the fight in the trade unions for trans rights, has been central to the fight to defend a woman's right to choose, be that over abortion or the right to wear the hijab, and why we understand the need to build a mass movement against racism and the far right. But the truth is, we are far too small. We're too small in every town and city to meet all the tasks that we face. We need a bigger party of active revolutionary socialists. And so we're saying to you today, if you're not a member, then join us. Join us in the SWP tonight. Don't leave this hall after such a brilliant festival of sharing ideas and coming together. Don't leave as an individual. Leave as part of a socialist organisation where we're going to take all of these fights forward together. Don't leave on your own, because we face massive urgent tasks. We need to be bigger. We need to be stronger to take them on. Join the Socialist Worker Party.